I think Sanji will get a second raid suit in the series that turns him into Zeph. What do I mean by this? Well, I think when he gets a second raid suit, presumably made by the efforts of Frankie and Usopp, it will give him a proper chef's coat and a chef's hat. Said coat and hat could be blue, but I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to them being white. This is a reflection of Zeph and a reflection of Sanji's personal Jolly Roger, because Chef Zeph wears a chef's hat or a toque and a proper chef's uniform with a blue ascot, which it's very funny that Sanji's personal color is blue. We'll keep talking about this through the video, but I think blue is very important to Sanji because it's a symbol of self-realization, as Diable Jambe, when it becomes Ifrit Jambe, only changes from red to blue once Sanji accepts who he is, sees that even though he is a weird Germa mutant, he still has people who love him and he still belongs to a group who admire his strength and skill, and then utilizes those changes in order to make his flame even hotter and brighter, changing the color from red to blue. But to continue, and as a final reflection of his Jolly Roger, he will get a proper chef's uniform with a hat. This is important because in the real world, quite interestingly, chef's hats have been synonymous with crowns. So you can say wearing a chef's hat makes you the king of a kitchen in a way, because but first, shout out to a moderator on my Discord, KMDP, because we talked about this years ago in a casual conversation. So big shout out to him because I remember the conversation recently and I wanted to put this out because this has been in the chamber for a while. But anyway, in the 7th century, and perhaps even a little before that, Asarian kings gave Asarian chefs crown-like hats in order to differentiate them from other cooks in the kitchen. As the story goes, kings were being poisoned a lot during that time by indignant chefs most of the time. So in order to give them a little bit of status, said kings gave them these special hats that seemed more along the lines of a crown, therefore equating them to the status of the royal family. So, in so many words, a chef's toque is a kind of crown. Therefore, Sanji would then be donned with a crown, making him a king in his own right. But to continue with the theme of kings being poisoned, what makes this so interesting is that in chapter 825, leading into chapter 826, once Sanji has left the crew because the events of Whole Cake Island are starting, Luffy catches a fish for the remaining starving Straw Hat pirates. However, seeing as how he does not know anything about the fish, he is poisoned after eating its meat. So that makes me think that there is a theme here about chefs and poison in One Piece. What makes this so interesting too is that a little while ago we did a video talking about how it's very likely that Sanji has technically poisoned one of Zoro's meals in the past, because during the events of Punk Hazard, we see Zoro eating a lunchbox and he's making crunching noises. But the chapter previous, Sanji threatened to put glass in his food. So in that way, Sanji has been the offender of poisoning people close to the king in Zoro, and due to his absence, the king was poisoned, meaning Luffy, by his own capture. So I find that very interesting. But to continue, this is very interesting too when you consider that as of this recording, Sanji doesn't have conquerors yet. So perhaps when he gets conquerors, this will put him on the path to getting a crown of his own in some way. Because the interesting part about him being a part of the monster trio is that he is the only one of the monster trio that doesn't wear a hat. Luffy has his straw hat, Zoro has his bandana, but Sanji doesn't have a hat. So I could see in the future this raid suit being his hat, as a chef's hat will be a part of the raid suit's transformation. Now, the reason why I think Sanji will have a raid suit made by Franky and Usopp is because of the narrative itself, and a little bit of foreshadowing that has happened after this chapter has come out. Because in chapter 931, around the end of the chapter, Sanji says to himself in reference to the raid suit, I'm gonna have to ask Frenosuke and Usohachi to change the design for me. Again, talking about the raid suit. So it's already being foreshadowed that the raid suit has to change in the future. However, we know that as of now, as far as we know, that the raid suit was destroyed by Sanji in the Queen and Sanji fight. However, what makes this so interesting is that Queen has copied all the different abilities of each raid suit, except for, of course, Reiju's. So he had all the abilities of the Germa while he was fighting Sanji. And that, of course, was a part of Sanji's whole self-realization and accepting that he is a weird Germa mutant. And that is why he unlocks Ifrit Jumbe and accepts that he has a weird exoskeleton now, making him hard as steel. So in that way, I think a flip to that is, while Queen copied all the abilities of the Germa suits, I think his son Franky will make his own Germa suit in a way, seeing as how Franky and Usopp as well were enamored by Sanji's initial transformation. I think it's very possible, with Usopp always being very adept at gadgets and Franky being a high-class engineer like his father, they'll both come together and make Sanji an official raid suit. The reason why I think he'll accept his raid suit more than the Germa one, because it's made by his family, essentially. It's made for him by people he cares about. And it will probably be more specified to his body because it's being made by people who know his history and who know how he actually fights. So there will probably be more modifications to his kicking power thanks to the raid suit, and a better acceptance of his ability to conjure fire, because of course that's his main gimmick now in the series. He lights his leg on fire with Ifrit Jumbe. Another very interesting idea too, that the people making said suit have a very intimate relationship with fire, you might as well say, because both Franky and Usopp have fire-based attacks. So I could see in the future that this blue chef's uniform that will be Sanji's raid suit will increase the power of Ifrit Jumbe and could increase the power of his kicks, on top of being his crown, technically, as a chef's hat will be a part of the suit. Now, will it be as tall as Zeph's chef's hat? I'm not sure, but I could see it, seeing as how it will make for a very funny pun and it will look kind of stupid, but it will be exceptionally powerful. And I bet you if anybody had anything to say about the hat, it would be Usopp, because Usopp, of course, knows Zeph after he's seen Zeph. And Luffy could point it out and say, oh yeah, you look like the old man. And I think that would be a really touching moment for Sanji. So yes, I do think Sanji's final power-up in the series will be a proper chef's uniform, and that will act as his crown, making him a matching set with Luffy and Zoro. But with that being said, if you're enjoying the video so far, hit the like button. And if you want to see more from me, hit the subscribe button, followed by that bell so you never miss a video. In addition, if you could, hit the hype button because it really does help. And with that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede Works.